So, why take such a hard line? I hear you ask. And the answer, in my estimation, should go without saying, is that it's the best line to take. It's been clear to me through experience, and I hope it's been clear to you, or at least been like a suspicion in the back of your mind that nothing will satisfy them, right? That's who they are fundamentally. So the question becomes, how do you deal with that? You know. If you're a member of a diplomatic corps from any Western country and you're sent to deal with a Russian envoy concerning this whole debacle or anything in general, well, you're going to encounter a brand of diplomacy that's been methodized, essentially. It would be interesting to find out how that was developed and, like, who innovated or whatever. It's a technique, it's a style. The Chinese call it wolf warrior diplomacy. They've been at it for over 40 years. I remember articles as a teenager, political cartoons of diplomats walking away from tables with the Chinese, looking for their keys and other things that have been picked out of their pockets. Just completely taken aback by how bold the stances on the other side were. The Russians are very similar. And you can witness in that style of diplomacy, which is unheard of. It's unspeakable between Western countries. You would never do that. I mean, personally, you would feel sick treating someone across a table that way. Probably even in personal negotiations. I'm not even sure that lawyers, the most ruthless of attorneys, corporate, could have the stomach for the farce that is negotiation with Eastern powers. Yeah. So it's a taste, It's a reminder of what the Slavosphere has had to deal with, Eastern Europe is dear to my heart. I don't know too much about it. Cold, strong, light beers. That's kind of amazing. Makes sense if you think about it. You're gonna need that. You have to deal with those fuckers. And submachine guns. That's funny, isn't it? It's not a joke, but high rate of fire, high capacity, small personal arms. That's what I know. Were it not for the Russian power, In the United States, we have an issue with gun control, right? I forget what the stat is. Last I remember it being something like 3 guns to every member of the population. Something ridiculous like that. Russia has us beat cold. Without going into it, like the Kalishnikov was ridiculously overproduced and just spilled out, donated in the most pathetic strategic gambit globally as like a tool of revolution, you know? You want to know where up and coming dictator states get their weapons? It's because Russia just made those things and just spread them all across the world. Cheap, you know? No electricity required, little maintenance. Power goes out, water goes out. The powder will still fire. You know, the one thing left, the machine that will be left after the apocalypse, is the fucking firearm. You know, how funny is that? A machine that fuels itself with its own function. It doesn't draw from an outside source. A machine independent of entropy comparatively to anything else. A legacy of soft slavery. Russian history is very ugly. There's peaks of beauty. But they bank on cruelty. You know. They want you to be so repulsed, so afraid, you know, of certain elements of their culture that they cultivate specifically for deterrence, I guess. I don't know. They call it tradition, but don't fuck with us. Like that kind of shit. Well, that's not the whole of them. Not even close, I would imagine. No one can know, you know. The truth of the genome, the population. Well, it's still concealed behind a wall. An information wall. Self-censorship is a staple of political stability. It's something that the Slavs don't want. Something that no one wants. But I don't know. I still can't put my finger on it. What makes Russia so special? Maybe they're just geographically isolated, you know. The whole country's really 2 cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg, and then everything else is tributary to those 2 places. Everyone who's anyone is there, you know. With the right kind of eyes, their actions are a dare, essentially, to the world. That limited number of people between those 2 cities, that their domain be challenged over the entire square mileage. It's I can't take it seriously. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if you were to think about it, if you were an alien come to Earth, and you saw what was being held together by whom and how, you wouldn't find it tenable. Russia is the land of the perpetual coup. You know, it's always in the works. And so, suppression of that has become so ingrained that it's not remarkable anymore. I think this accounts for I think this would explain in great detail, or to a great extent, the attitude of the Russian populace. You know, they're used to the methods of distraction away from that. And then, but they also know in like the backs of their minds, like no state is more volatile. You know, no state has a bigger history of upheaval, dissatisfaction, of no state is more lawful in a way. It's funny, but it's like a human law, you know. It's an ancient one, the right of the sacrificial king, you know, the one who's in power, who finally lost control. Everyone just lets him slip away. That's how it is. Until that point, you don't say a word. Frightening. But I'd like to see their stories told. They're very worthwhile. My heart, you know, despite all the bitter polemic that I espouse, it kind of longs for an exchange of culture, you know. I think Western media, Western film, Western television could do justice to the Russian story in full human honesty, you know. Tragic, maybe self-deprecating, but ultimately glorifying, you know. It would be something that we owe artistically. Throughout all this, I keep thinking of the Russian clown, the Russian ballet, the dead tradition of Russian literature and intellectualism. I miss those guys. You know, when I read them, I don't see someone else. Like, Chekhov's right there. He and I would get along, believe me. And most of all, subjectively, of course, I think of Tchaikovsky. The West, we, oh Russia, well, by extension Russia, but like Tchaikovsky in particular, a debt. There is no more an American composer than that guy. What do I mean by that? Do you listen to music? You ever see a movie called Star Wars? You ever hear of a composer named John Williams? I'm not going to hum bars for you, but if you take a moment and compare, if you're familiar with, like, say, the Nutcracker, that's John Williams' teacher. That guy was Star Wars before it was fucking Star Wars. It's so obvious. Tchaikovsky was gay as a flamingo, by the way. You know, that guy must have a very sad life. I guess where I'm going with that is that Russia isn't what we think they are, or they look like, or they. Russia isn't what they're diplomats, or politicians, or officials, or gangsters say they are. Not at all. Those people didn't make the country what it is. They just took it where it ended up. And we know that because it happens everywhere. We just dealt with it better. Now we apparently have to deal with it for you. You should be appreciative of that, actually. Shit. That's what kills me about all this. Everything that you, Soviet, neo-Soviet antagonist, everything that you have, we made for you. And you know that. And you didn't trick us out of it or trick us into giving it to you. Granted, there were bitter, unnecessary pills that you had to swallow along the way. For which I had been on your side, honestly, before I was here, before I was anyone, when I was young. That you just made me change my mind about. I mean, it's so sad. When you run a disinformation campaign, the people that are the easiest to reach and hurt are the people who would be the most sympathetic to your history. And without knowing it, you shoot yourself in the foot. Behold me. Here I am. Our family hosted a pair of Russians when I was 17. Growing up in media, they were like the Red Menace, but that was far old. We would mock people who would, as racist, essentially, or foolish, pitiable. Those who would criticize Russia for the sake of being Russia. I shit you not. I shit you not. They were behind the times. And everything else they said was stupid anyway, right? That was really the beginning of the Democratic, Republican, left-right, conservative, liberal split. Before the wall fell, you know, the split that you sought to exploit. To some end. So the conservatives, you know, wouldn't even listen to you, even if you got their attention, which you couldn't. the net was still new. Yeah. The only way you could get to them was through the liberals. So, you find a way to drive liberals nuts with Facebook, of all things, which is fucking insane that even... I can't believe that. It's richer than that, but let's just stick with a simple version of it. So, and then the liberals get in a huff and drive the conservatives nuts, who hated you anyway, right? Well, you really showed me who I am, you know, what I believe, what I stand for. People say you become more conservative as you get older. I would have never believed it. When I was 18, well, it was 2000. It was the 2000 election. Al Gore, the incumbent vice president, GWB, and the third parties. I voted for Nader. You know that? I voted for Ralph Nader when I was 18, or my first presidential election. I was that left. I liked Al Gore, don't get me wrong. And I wish I would have voted for him, but it is what it is. I had high hopes for you, Vlad, son of Vlad. It's fucking hilarious. I had very high hopes. And it looks like you lost control of your keys to power by gaining tight control of your keys to power. You can't let go. It was The Doors. It was the interview you did with Oliver Stone. I found that very touching. The fact that you would bother, you know. I like Oliver Stone quite a bit. And, I don't know, that was quite the olive branch, I thought. There are things that worried me about you. You took Bush for a ride in a Yugo. That seemed like a jab of kinds, you know? That seemed like an unkind thing to do, which I thought was funny because I was not a fan of him at the time. But still, it sent us. It was a strange picture, you know. It seemed like you were rubbing his nose in something, you know. The Yugo was a failure, essentially. So you invited him to partake of the failure. It's kind of cold. He had a little Scotty dog named Barney, I think. Like, did you bring tough dogs? Did you brag about having tougher pets than the American president? I like little dogs. You know, like, that's... What else was there? Well, there's other things. It gets salacious. You've led a salacious life. Let's not mince words. And you didn't have to. For a long time, I held you, Vladimir, son of Vladimir, in a neutral to high regard as a human being, because you'd inherited a very tough spot. And maybe we, were proud to see you jump at the chance, you know. American media doesn't necessarily reflect the opinions of its citizens, you know. And the citizens are king. Believe it or not, like, it's... If there are things about your country that we don't understand or can't understand, something that you don't understand, maybe can't understand about us, is that the citizen is king. What we say goes. It doesn't matter. You know? Our entire culture is a war for, well, my attention, essentially, metaphorically. Do you know what I mean? That's where the buck stops. And moreover, the part that you probably really can't understand, I'm assuming, is that we walk that walk. It's really true. The things that we choose to forget, the things that we choose to remember become history by virtue of our GDP, if nothing else, by virtue of our enterprise. We build everything. We invented the world that you call your own. I never want to bring that up. Because the implication is that we can just take it away and you can go back to farming whatever it is that you farm. Cold words over the graves of people whose names aren't mentioned. You know? Do you think it makes me proud to say that? Do you think that makes me egotistical? Does that make me ugly? I don't know. I don't think about that, but that's what it is. I offered mutual victory conditions for the long game. You've seen, by virtue of the society you've built, with what we've invented, the benefit of that. That's the end of the day. That's the bottom line. You have a country full of artists and geniuses. You'll have to accept that some of them are fags, you know? You'll have to accept that some of them get mouthy, demonstrate, are colorful. If you can't cope with those occurrences in a way, if you can't see them as any other way than a threat to your power personally, if you can't acknowledge, obviously, that they're not a threat, they're like a revitalizing force. if you can't help but export that to other countries that don't want it, if you just take a moment to understand why, you could, then you're not going to come along for the ride. You play this like a ruthless game. I understand that. And I understand that it's not your design. I can't believe that about you. I can't. You wouldn't have visited Jim Morrison's grave. You know? I'm grateful to you. If for no other reason than it's better you than Lukashenko. I didn't know why you were picked. And then I read in a single source. So if I'm wrong, please forgive me, please correct me, but I could not see Lukashenko on the throne. That would be a nightmare. Far better you than he. And far better he be gone than he be there. The reason our diplomacy is it hit a wall, has always hit a wall, you know, is because we have this question for you that can't be answered in the press, in the public eye, because of the various influence of keys to power that you must hold. And so we don't ask it out of respect. We respect you, you know, in the most important ways. And that question is, what would it take? You know, bullshit aside, forgive me, but truly, for this to end. The whole chapter knowing that we don't abide cronyism or gangsterism, and that rule of law and freedom of expression must stand. You know, that's when I say that we built everything, that's how we built everything. So we're not just being righteous about it, but if you want to have the good stuff, and if you want to make the good stuff yourself too, which we would like to see, it's cheaper for us to buy it than make it. Capitalism, duh. What would it take for you to have a radical transformation of your society, be free of intimidation and violence, that good things can flourish, you know? We'd have to demonstrate that such a way of life wouldn't be a threat to your power. I think about that privately. I kind of punish myself. I live an unhappy life to a degree, believe it or not, on your behalf, privately, because I can't prove to you that we're trustworthy. On the whole, there's elements to us that are not. And we were dealing with it before you fucking interdicted. So that's why we're here. Maybe it's, everything happens for a reason. It's been going on for a long time now. I've been talking your ear off. I meant what I wrote. That's how it is. If it has to be. There are no other diplomatic postures, like we don't like bullshit. We don't like empty speech. We ourselves feel embarrassed when we have to engage in it, But sometimes there's just nothing left to say. This is about you and I. Leave the Ukraine out of it. If you're truly as close to them as you claim, you can charm them. NATO is only as relevant as it is relevant. It's an insurance company, essentially. It doesn't invade. It's bad for business. NATO is what allows peacetime industry to thrive. It gives investor confidence, which gives prosperity, or at least the opportunity for it. So don't hand me any bullshit about you being taken over. No one wants to run your country for you. We have enough. We have too much as it is. As I said, we have our own fucking problems that we're trying to deal with. Without you being a distraction or an unseen hand exacerbating. Is there any goodwill left in you? That's what I'm trying to ascertain. And nothing you could directly say one way or the other would convince me. I would have to watch, see you soften. Control your keys to power. I've said this already. Kick out who you need to kick out. Kill who you need to kill. Threaten who you need to threaten. Until you don't have to kill or kick out or threaten anymore. Do you want to be the man of history that reads well? I'm rooting for you. I am. Truly. Your subordinates are inexperienced and have small minds. They're unworthy of the post that the Russian state asks of them. I like your country. I like your citizens. I like your culture. Would that cruelty were not a part of it. Don't poke at us. Don't shell kindergartens. Clean up the landmines along the tourist beaches in Crimea. That would be something, you know. I could talk to you for hours. ask you things that would be uncouth to ask you here. Could joke with you even. Vladimir, the son of Vlad. You're like the single reason I want to learn Russian. The fact that I speak in English to you, because I don't know another language, and you deal in English is not lost on me. Like, I would be honored to speak Russian if I could do it. I'll work on that. It's an honor to speak with you. I wish it were under better circumstance. And in the future, despite what anyone else close to you or close to me, whatever side, would think or say, like, well, I hope that comes to pass. I have quite a story to tell that maybe you are singularly the only person that would appreciate. And perhaps you have a story to tell that, you know. Until next time. The way through and past this is closer than we think, and there's profits for all, but there are certain rules. You know, let's talk about what they are. Even if we can't talk about them in ways that are published in politically influential outlets. You know what I mean? До свидания.